All right, good morning. It is Monday, the 24th of October, and this is the email I literally sent out just minutes ago. And as it says here, today we are going to go over chapter 14 in the Murach text. And afterwards, I'm going to go and build one of the applications that is in the labs at the end of the chapter. Again, I've mentioned this before, but just because I'm going over them, that doesn't mean you're not supposed to do them. You are still supposed to do them. All right. Tomorrow, we're going to go over chapters 15 and 16. For chapter 15, we're only going to go through part of the chapter. Basically, we're going to hit on the interfaces. And we'll go through chapter 16. Then we'll go through another example that's at the end of the chapter. Wednesday will be a lab period. And by Wednesday, I will have emailed you the pretest for chapters 14 through 16. We will go over that pretest on Thursday beginning at 9:30. And Friday will be a lab, and so will next Monday. All right. Tuesday, so a week from tomorrow, will be your next hands-on test, and that'll be on chapters 14 through 16. Now, what that really means, though, is when you look at this, we've already done section 1, we've already done section 2, so we'll be finished with section 3. All right. Next week, starting on Wednesday, I'm going to lecture on chapter 17, and probably on Thursday, I'll lecture on chapter 18. I'm still trying to figure out what homework I want to give you from there. All right. And then the following week, we're going to finish that up. And then the rest of the semester is going to be spent on databases. All right. I'm not even sure, to be honest with you. You'll probably have a test on like chapters 17 and 18, but I don't think I'm going to give you any kind of test on 19, 20, 21, and 22. But rather, we're going to be working on an application together as a class, and I'll get you to a certain point in it, and then I'm going to have you kind of finish it up on your own. All right, so with that said, let's jump into chapter 14. There's nothing on chapter 13 that we're going to cover. You don't have to do any labs, you don't have to do any homeworks, you don't have to do any written test for chapter 13. So you can just skip that. I'm going to jump right into chapter 14 and talk about inheritance. The way that I typically start on this too is just to let you know inheritance, when you talk about inheritance in programming languages, it's similar to genetic inheritance, but it's not the same thing. What do I mean by that? And I may have given examples like this before. I don't think I have, but I may have. Typically, genetically speaking, if you've got a guy with a big nose who marries a woman with a big nose and they have a kid, quite often the kid will have a big nose. All right, that's just genetics. I'm not saying it always happens like that. I understand that. But genetically speaking, there's probably a pretty good chance that will happen. So what does the kid do if the kid isn't happy with his or her nose? Well, either they get a nose job or they live with it. It's not like they can take that nose off and put on one that's smaller or one they'd rather have. But the reason I'm telling you that is with programmatic inheritance, you can do that. You can do the equivalent of that. All right, so the author mentions here that inheritance is one of the key concepts of OOP, or object-oriented programming. It allows you to create what are called child classes or subclasses that are based off of a parent class, or what's also known as a superclass. All right, inheritance, as it says, is used throughout .NET, and you will start to learn how you can create and work with your own inheritance. So when we look in here, it's not a particularly long chapter, but we have a quick introduction, then talk about some basic skills for working with inheritance, and then they go into this version of the product maintenance application. From there, they talk a little bit about object types and casting, and then finally, the chapter finishes with abstract and sealed classes. So let's just jump right into it. I don't want to sit and read to you, all right? But when you take a look at the picture right here, all right, you can see some of the terminology they're showing you. So this system.windows.forms.form, that is a class. It is the parent class, also known as the base class, and the product maintenance.frm new product, that's called a derived class or a child class. These are also known as superclasses and subclasses. It just depends on the book you read. A lot of books use all the terms. Some books usually use one, only use one term or maybe a couple. And basically, um, even JavaScript supports it supports inheritance. Okay, so most programming languages provide direct support or at least indirect support for inheritance. Probably is important in here. Again, I realize that sometimes these chapters can get a little bit unwieldy and they're a little long, but I would at least take a look at what's on the right-hand page, look at the pictures or look at the code, and read the description on the bottom of the page. All right. As it says, when you get a new class, it inherits everything from the existing class by default. All right. Now, the derived class, as it says, can add more things to it. That's known as extending the parent class. That's typically why you would do this. There would be no reason, there would be absolutely no reason for you to base one class, a child class, after a parent class if you weren't going to make some changes to it. All right. When you make those changes, so for instance, if you look in here and we look at this example, if for instance, this base class has a show method, so does this one. If we change the show method in the child classes, if we change it, all right, that's called overriding. We talked a little bit in an earlier chapter about overloading. This is overriding. And when you override, you take something that you have and you modify it, typically to meet your own needs. As it says here, when you create a new form in C#, the form inherits everything from the system.windows.forms.form class. In other words, there's not a lot of rewriting you have to do. Typically, all you'll want to do is add your own stuff to it. All right, how does .NET use inheritance? This is a pretty good picture, believe it or not. And what they're saying here is at the top of your hierarchy is something called object. All right, the child that you can see there, the child of object is called control. All right, and when you look under the control, you can see, I'm not going to read these to you, you can look at all of them. All right. But it's kind of important that you realize when you look in here, and some of the stuff we've talked about, but there are things that buttons and checkboxes and radio buttons all do. All right. And they get that stuff that they can all do from this button base class. Same thing with the list control as far as the combo box and the list box. All right. So as it says, .NET uses inheritance. I mean, that's the way it was set up. C# is an object-oriented programming language. All right. They even mention in here that if you want to refer to your combo box, technically, if we called it CBO, for a combo like CBO list or something, that's how you'd refer to it. But technically, it is system.windows.forms. Then it would be CBO list or whatever. All right. By default, which means unless told otherwise, you get all of this stuff that you see right here. All right. So all of this you get when you inherit something. All right. In other words, every class that you create automatically has these methods that you see on the left. ToString, equals, get type, etc. I'm not going to read these to you. Again, it just means that, for example, you can override or make your own ToString method, but you get a ToString method by default. Same thing with these other ones that are in here. And that's what it's saying in here. Again, don't want to sit and read to you. All right. There are some methods that are in here that you will probably never, ever work with, such as, I don't think I've ever done anything with reference equal or get hash code or finalize. All right, probably not also with member-wise clone. But the thing with the toString, you oftentimes override that. Equals is kind of neat because you can compare two objects for equality. All right, and get type is used fairly often too to return the type of an object. So they start to show you in here how you can use inheritance. And this, pretty much at least, I believe, is the example that's in the chapter. So you'll notice that you create a product class. And you can see that every product contains these 4 fields. So that if you create a book based off of the product, or you create software based off of the product, the book or the software have those 4 fields in common. All right. And when I say those 4 fields, it's really 3 fields. It's the string code, the string description, and the decimal price, and they both have a get display text. In addition, book has a string that represents an author. Software has a string that represents a version. Now, on whatever I said it was, Wednesday or Thursday, whenever, I guess it's Thursday, when we go over the pretest, basically this pretest is going to ask you, if you remember what we did earlier is we created an employee class. All right. But now what we're going to do is we're going to create a bunch of different types of employees. For instance, if you work at a company of any size, that company could have, for example, they could have hourly workers or hourly employees. They could have piece worker employees. They could have commission worker employees, and they could have salary worker employees. That's the kind of thing that we're going to be looking at. All right. So again, as it says, you use inheritance in your applications to create generic base classes that implement common elements of related subclasses. To kind of put that a little bit here into perspective, just imagine that we did this. I'm not going to make this very difficult at all, but I do want to put it in here just so you see it. So if we came in here and we created a class called animal, all right, then underneath here, I'm not gonna put anything, but what you would put in there would be things all animals would have in common, whatever that would be. All right, so you decide. And so it would be very generically done. Then you could come in here and, for example, you could say human, dog, cat, fish, etc. All right. So the idea is anything that you would put up here that you would say all animals would have in common would automatically be put in down here. Now, just as a real simple example, let's just say that what we said here was that all animals have the ability to speak. Now, you can say, well, a fish doesn't speak, but hopefully at least you get the idea. So again, with a human, this would be able to be talked to a dog, maybe woof. For a cat, meow. And for a fish, let's just say gurgle, something like that. But the point is this, that what I could do is I could define a speak method up here saying that all animals need this speak method, but then I could choose to override it down here so that each type of animal could speak its own speak. In other words, a dog wouldn't say meow, a cat wouldn't say gurgle, etc. All right, and that's kind of what we're working towards in here. All right. It says when you inherit a class, you can use the derived class whenever an instance of the base class is called for. You're going to see that in just a little bit. All right, so how do you do this? First thing, as it says there, is you need to know how to create a base class. All right, now this looks real similar to what we've done before, and guess what? It is. That's the same product class that we created earlier. You'll notice that what we have in here, again, for whatever reason, they decided to do it like this. So you say, wait a minute, they didn't create instance methods. Yes, they did. This is another way that you can create this stuff. Rather than creating instance methods like we have been doing, you can basically just set it up with the getters and setters. That's totally legit to do that. One thing to notice about this example is everything that's in here, everything is public, which means not only can it be used by the product class, but other classes can use and work with product code, etc. These access modifiers, the only thing I will tell you about this is the three that you should be concerned with are public, protected, and private. Don't worry about internal, protected internal, or private protected. I'm not saying that you'd never use those. You would not ever use those in a class like we're in now, but if you were a professional C# programmer, you may have reason to use those. When something is public, it's available to anything and everyone. All right. And again, I've kind of given examples like this before, but it's kind of like a public figure. Think about a politician. All right. That if I want to go and talk to my state senator, etc., I should be able to go over to his or her office, make an appointment, and see them. They're public figures. Everybody should have access to them. Private, on the other hand, all right, are available only inside of the class in which you're working. That's like a private figure. In other words, when you think about it, if I go to a public place like Rankin Technical College, all right, they do have key codes by the doors, but the point is technically anyone should be able to walk into Rankin. All right. And if you go, I work at the Rankin, I'm off of the Rankin Wentzville campus, and there's two buildings. If you go into the training center, it's open basically, I believe, from about 8 till 5 every day. Anybody can walk in there. All right. On the other hand, when stuff, like I said, is private, it's like you can't just sit there and open up somebody's door that you don't know and walk into their house. So when something is private, it's available not only in that class, but also to other classes. When something is private, it's available only within the class, within the class in which it's been defined. If something is protected, it's available in the current class and in any child classes. So you can kind of look at it, if something is public, available to everybody, think about a family type of thing. If something is private, it's only available within the immediate family. If something is protected, it's available to the family, to the kids, to the grandkids, to the great-grandkids, etc. All right. So as it says here down at the bottom, you create a base class the same way you created any other classes, the same way we've been doing it. And they talk in here about these, they're all referred to as access modifiers. All right. And again, the three that we're most concerned with are public, private, and protected. So next there is how to create a subclass. The key thing is what you see right here. All right, this. And what I mean is, when you work with inheritance, you work with what's called an is-a relationship. And if you're like, what the heck is that? Well, look at this on the screen. A product, I should say a book, is a product. So public class, derived or child class is a type of parent or superclass. All right, child, parent. Now, languages like Java, rather than using a colon, they use the word extends. So if we were writing this in Java, we'd say public class book extends product. In C#, they went with just using the colon. Now, when you look at this, this may look a little bit confusing. All right, at least the first times the time that you look at it. What it's saying here, and I'm in this area that's right here inside of the curly braces. Since product is the parent of book, book gets everything that product had. What does that mean? That means that book automatically gets code, description, price, and get display text. It just gets that stuff and it's available to it. In addition, in here, we're creating a new property called author. So author is only Basically, it's product does not know about author. Book does, but product does not. All right. And what we're saying in here too, the other thing that gets a little bit confusing is this is a constructor, but it looks different than the constructors we worked on before. This constructor, it says it needs what? It needs a code, a description, a number, I'm sorry, an author, and a price. Then we got this goofy looking thing, this colon base. What the colon base means is, hey, the parent will handle the code, the parent will handle the description, and the parent will handle the price. The only thing we have to worry about is the author. All right. And even if I had a child based off of books, so maybe I had children's book, for example, okay, then I would say something like public class children's book colon book. And children's book would also automatically get code, description, price, and author. And I could add anything more that I needed for a children's book. All right. Now, what they also are doing in here, when you look down at the bottom, this is the first time you've seen this. We are overriding the get display text that is available from our parent class, from the product class. Why? Because we want to be able to add in here the author. All right. And the only way that we can do that is to override the method. And they mention in here, there's a couple ways of doing it. It's not that big a thing. Take a look at this and take a look at this. See which one makes more sense to you and use that one. So, as they mention here on the bottom of the page, a constructor of a derived class automatically calls the parent's constructor first. All right. You use the base keyword to refer to the base class or the parent class. You use the override keyword, all right, when you want to be able to override something from the base class. And it says you use the new keyword to provide a new implementation. This is called hiding. It says in most cases, it's better to use virtual and overridden methods and properties so you can benefit from polymorphism. What is that? Well, believe it or not, we've already started to look at polymorphism. And what do I mean? All right. Well, if you remember this kind of poor picture that I just created for you, all right, when you take a look at that picture, if I sit there and let's say that I come in and I create a dog object. So I say, I don't know, dog Barney equals new dog. All right. And then I come in and say Barney dot speak. All right. That should make sense to you that what's going to happen is Barney is going to say woof. All right. But if I come in here and make a cat and I say Whiskers, let's say, equals new cat, and then I say Whiskers dot speak, here again, you're going to get woof or bark or whatever. I just said woof, so that's fine. And here, you're going to get meow. Why does that matter? The thing that you have to understand about this is the correct speak method is called based off of the type of object you're working with. So since Barney is a dog, we get that. Since Whiskers is a cat, we get that. And polymorphism says that I can write one method and rewrite it or overwrite it or whatever whenever I need to based on the type of object that I'm working with. Now, that's not exactly the way that they'll mention this in here, but it says it lets you treat objects of different types as if they were the same type. All right. And what does that mean? Well, in the example they have here, and you're going to see it in just a couple minutes, what they're basically saying is whether it's a book or whether it's a piece of software, it still has a code, it still has a description, it still has a price. So the only thing that's going to be different is that a book has an author and software has a version. And that's why you can see in here that when we overwrite the get display text, here we've got author and here we've got version. And when we create a book, we've got to pass in, all right, in here, there's the author. All right. But when we do the software, we pass in a version. All right. Now it's a little confusing because they're both strings. All right. So technically the system would have no way of knowing if I put a version in there of Ann Bame or I put a author in a 4.5, it wouldn't know it. All right. But since it's new book, it expects that that parameter is the name of an author. Since it's new software, it expects that the name of that parameter is a version. All right. So as it says here, polymorphism lets you treat objects of different subclasses that are derived from the same base class as if they had the type of the base class. All right. And I'll let you read the rest yourselves. Okay. Again, a lot of new terminology in here. May or may not make a lot of sense. And Grant, I'm not picking on you at all. I'm not saying you because you're doing fine. But for those of you who are struggling, especially with this part of the text, it's really imperative that you read the chapter. They do give good examples in here. All right. So let's take a quick look, and I mean a quick look, at this product maintenance application that's in here. So I'm going to try to find it. Take me just a second. I should have brought it up before class, but I didn't. So let's see. This is right out of your book. This is the product maintenance application that is in your book on chapter 14, and you all have a copy of that. Just bring these two up here. There we go. So there is a list of products, and we are also able to go in and add a new product. And you'll notice that right now it says book, so we've got the author. But when we run this, we're using basically the same form here. All right, so if I click add product, I've got book, code, description, author, price. But if I switch to software, that changes to version. All right. So what happens is I'm able to rewrite basically the form based on the type of product that I'm trying to put in here. And if I put in book and I give it a code of, let's just say ABC123, all right. And I guess it only has 4 characters. Description, new book, author, some author, and price, $33.99. All right. And I click save, it goes in there, but it's recognized as being a book. All right. If I come in again and add another product, but I change it to software, and I come in here and I say BCD1, all right, and I say new software, version 1.0, and price 44.55, that is recognized then as being software. All right. And the rest of the program works the same. If I don't have anything highlighted and I click delete, nothing happens. If I highlight one of them and I click delete, it says, are you sure you want to delete new book? All right. And if I say yes, it's gone. Okay. So it's the same program that we looked at before, except that now we have 2 different types. So when you look in here, this is the same product thing as we had before. This has not changed one lick. This is exactly the same as what we used before. So each product has a code, a description, and a price. All right. And when I come in here and take a look at the other two things that are in here, those being, again, where are we? Software and book. All right. So when I come in here now, here is software. And again, as you can see, all software has a code, a description, and a price. And the code, description, and price are handled by the parent, and software must handle the version property. And it overrides the get display text so that it's able to print the author information. In the same way, when I go over to the book class, it's the same kind of thing. So book has, again, a code, a description, and a price, but it also adds an author. The parent class, the product class, handles the code, the description, and the price. All right. And this class must handle the author. All right. And again, that I do understand this. Anyway, that's beeping so much. Okay. But for whatever, it takes a little bit of time to wrap your head around this. All right. Because you might say, yeah, I was just starting to understand regular classes. Now you're throwing in other classes. And guess what? We're not going to go any deeper than this, but you could have a class based off of this class. Like I mentioned before, we could have all sorts of different kinds of books. We could have all sorts of different kinds of software. So what I've shown you here, this is what's known as a level 1 hierarchy chart. This is level 0. This is level 1. You can literally go down as many levels as you need to. And in many ways, it's like writing an outline. You're going from very general to very specific. So this might be Roman numeral 1, and this might be A, B, C, and D. And then, for instance, if we broke it down so we had different kinds of humans or different kinds of dogs or different kinds of cats, that would be another level down. So this can get literally as complex as it needs to be. But what you're trying to do in here all the time is you're trying to push off the detail as far down as you can. All right, so I just went over that, but the code is right here. All right, as it says, it handles two types of products, books and software. It has a radio button that lets you choose which one you want. We already talked about that. I just quickly went over a little bit of the code. All right, you'll notice it in yellow right here is the word virtual. All right. And as they mentioned down at the bottom here, well, they don't, but it's on the next page. All right. Well, when you mention the word virtual like they have here, all right, what that means is when something is virtual, it is possible for you to override it. All right. So now they've got this product list, and all that's doing is it's listing out the products. Now, what they have done here is they have one generic list, and this one generic list holds both book products and software products. We could have created two different lists, one list for books and one list for products. That's just not the way they did it here. All right. And then they've got this product maintenance. Notice they're using a for each loop here. A for each loop is a special type of for loop that is used with different types of collections. All right, things like arrays, things like lists. You end up literally creating this new variable called P right here. And what this is saying is, what I want you to do is I want you to cycle through every product that we have, and I want you to show it in the list box. And that's literally what that is saying. All right. And the new product form, again, you'll notice in here, notice if rb.book, I'm sorry, rbbook.checked. That says if you have checked the radio button for a book. All right. Okay. Believe it or not too much left in this chapter, but next they talk about object types and casting. This is heavy stuff. All right. You may be asked a question or two or three or more on the written test. There'll be nothing on any homework. There'll be nothing on any lab. There'll be nothing on any test or hands-on test that will talk about object types and casting. But it says how to use the type class to get information about an object's type. That's that get type that we talked about before. All right. And when you start to use some of this stuff, all right, what they're just going to show you in here is you can get information about whatever it is you're working on. Why would you want to do that? Well, again, let's say as an example, I mentioned this before that right now in the list box, we are just including everything in the list box, whether it's a product, whether it's a book product or a software product. But maybe later we decide we do want different lists. All right. So we can go and look through some of the stuff that's in here and find out what type we're working with. And based on that type, put it in the appropriate list. Casting with inheritance. This, again, this is pretty heavy stuff. All right. You got to kind of look at it this way, that a child can do anything a parent can do, and typically some things a parent cannot do. All right. Now, sometimes what you can do, and I don't want to go into this in too much depth because you probably will find it really very hard to understand. But sometimes you can end up doing casting. So you can cast. So notice we've got here product P equals new book. All right. How can you do that? How can you say a product is equal to a book? Well, they mention in here that C# allows you to implicitly cast a subclass to its base class. What does that mean? Anytime you see something done implicitly, it's done by the software. So it says, as a result, you can use a subclass to refer to anything that you would normally use to refer to a parent. And as it says here, for example, you can specify a book object whenever a product object is expected because a book is a product. The second bullet there says you must explicitly cast a base class object when a reference to one of its subclasses is required. When something is done explicitly, you, the programmer, have to do it. So as it says there, for example, you must explicitly cast a product object to a book if a book object is expected. If you attempt to do something that's illegal, it may actually work until you run the program, and then it might blow up. All right. When I say it might work, I just mean you won't get any compiler errors, but you'll get a runtime error. And I think they even give an example in here. Throws a cast exceptions. You probably would get that then when you try to run the program. All right. The last thing that's discussed in here are abstract classes and sealed classes. Okay. One thing you've seen before, I'm going to go back just a little bit. Let's see. When you create a new class, you use the word new. That's the word that you use when you instantiate. Okay. But sometimes a class that you create is so generic, you never ever want to allow the person to create an object of that class. What does that mean? Well, you'd never create an animal object because it wouldn't make any sense. All right. You know, it's like you wouldn't say to somebody, hey, I just got a new animal, because they wouldn't have no idea what you were talking about. Even down here, if I were to go down here And just as an example, let's just say that I went down to dog and I wrote down, I don't know, my family, we have a Bichon Frise. All right. And maybe you've got a St. Bernard. And maybe you've got a golden retriever. I'll just leave it right there. You get the idea, hopefully. All right. When a class is too generic, you don't tell somebody, hey, I just bought a dog, because when you do, the first thing they're going to say is, what kind is it? When you've got classes that are so generic in nature that you never want to allow a person to create objects of that type of class, you make the class abstract. All right. When you make a class abstract, then that class cannot be nude. It can't be instantiated. You could still instantiate this and this and this, but if I made it abstract, you couldn't instantiate that. So typically, the higher up the hierarchy you go, the better chance that the classes are going to be abstract, and the lower you go, they won't be. All right. If I decide that, let's say that I don't, right here with humans, I don't want you to be able to go and make objects that are lower. I mean, down here, there's different kinds of cats, there's different kinds of dogs and fish. There really aren't different kinds of humans. You can say, well, there's men and women. They're all humans. All right. But we don't have different breeds that I know of, at least. All right. When we look at all human beings as being the same, why am I telling you this? Because if I decide I don't want this to be broken down, if I don't want this is, let's say, in its final form, and I don't want there to be any different kinds here, then I make that sealed. So when you make something abstract, all right, you're saying that it cannot be instantiated. When you make something sealed, you say that it is on the bottom leg, so to speak, of the inheritance hierarchy, that you cannot make a child class from it. Okay? And that's what they get to in here. So as it says, an abstract class is a class that can be inherited by other classes, but you can't use it to create a new object. So it can't be nude, so to speak. All right. It can contain properties, methods, and other members, just like a base class. And it can have abstract methods and abstract properties. All right. And again, you can read the rest of the ones that are there. All right. Finally, again, with sealed classes, as it says, a sealed class is a class that can't be inherited. You should be very leery of creating sealed classes, because what you're saying there is, hey, nobody's ever going to want to extend this any further. All right. And it's not recommended unless you've got a really good reason for doing it. So as it says here, a sealed class is a class that cannot be inherited. All right. So you code the sealed keyword in the class declaration. Okay. And they show that up here someplace in one of the examples. There you go, public sealed. All right. You can also seal an individual property or a method. Okay. It does say up there that it can result in a performance improvement. Okay. But again, it says this feature is rarely used in business applications. And that's it. So I realize you got to take off, and that's not a problem. But what I want to mention is what I'm going to do after the break is there are, I don't know how many problems that are on here. This is the chapters 14 and 15 labs. All right. And I'm going to do this letters thing after the break. Okay. So you can see that we're going to have a letter class, and then, which is a child of object, everything is, but we're also going to have a certified letter class, which is a child of letter. All right. So what we're going to end up doing, this is going to be the interface. I'm going to build everything from scratch. There's a group box here, and in that group box, there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4 labels, and 1, 2, 3 text boxes. And I put 3 buttons in here: ascend, declare, and exit. This is another group box that has a text box in it, a multi-line text box. Every time that I come in here and I put in a recipient and a sent date, and if I just click send, it's going to be one of these for 50 cents. If I put a tracking number in it, then it's a certified letter, and instead of being 50 cents, it'll be 65 cents. So that's what we're going to do after the break. All right. Tomorrow, I'm going to go over chapters 15 and 16. Then I'm going to do this program. Now, hopefully you can see, taking a quick look here, the interface is a lot more intricate for this program right here than the one for this program. This one we'll build from scratch. Tomorrow, when I get to this point, I'm going to have that interface built already. So again, there'll be a label, 2 text boxes, a group box with 3 radio buttons, 3 more group boxes, each one with 5 radio buttons, a button for calculating. Again, we'll put a clear and an exit here also, a label for the cost, and a label for the description. So we'll add all of this stuff tomorrow. And what you'll notice here for the one tomorrow is we'll have a photo class, and we'll have 2 child classes, one that's called matted photo and one that's called frame photo. All right. Now, you are going to be responsible. Forget this thing. Mr. Smith seems to have this fascination with Pokemon. You don't have to do this. So lab 3 will not be assigned. Lab 4 will not be assigned because it's more of the same stuff. All right. Lab 5, I want you to try this on your own. We will talk about it more in the coming days. All right. But it's pretty much adding on here. And what it's saying is now we have basically 3 different kinds of accounts: a regular account, which I call the bronze account, a silver account, and a gold account. And a gold account can do everything a silver account can do and then more. A silver account can do everything an account can do and then more. All right, so we'll look at that. The big difference in here, this looks pretty much the same as before, except now there's a print statement. And I believe that it's only if you're a gold account member, it'll come in here and it'll print whatever you did in here. We'll talk about that at a later time. And I'd also like you to try number 6, this network scan attack. It's going to make you think a little bit. All right. And there's the picture for it, etc. Now, on the homework for chapters really 14 through 16, if we go back to here, you'll notice there's, for 14, there's this one. All right, use inheritance. Okay. And for 15, I'm not going to make you do either one of these. Create and use an interface. We'll look at this one, but I don't think I'm going to assign it. This one I'm definitely not going to assign, the implement the IEnumerable. For 16, we'll look at this XML documentation. All right. But I am going to probably ask that you try to create and use a class library. If you don't know what that is, that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. All right. So chapter 15 tomorrow, when we go through this, we are going to be going over the interface part, which is about the first half of the chapter. And I'm not going to do anything with the generics, which is the second half of the chapter. All right. Then when we get to chapter 16 tomorrow, we'll go over all of this. Again, not a very long chapter. All right. And we will do that. So that's what we have on tap for tomorrow. So today, after the break, I'm going to go over this letter thing. I'll explain it. All right. I'm not going to save it because, again, you still have to do that. Tomorrow, I will go over the first part of chapter 15 and all of chapter 16. Then we will go over this photos thing. Again, I won't save it. All right. Wednesday will be a lab for the entire period. I will make sure that by Wednesday, I have the pretest mailed out to you. Thursday, we will go over the pretest. There's a lot of code to write for that pretest. All right. And again, as always, I will put that out there. All right, since it's something that I wrote. Friday, as always, will be a lab. 1 week from today on Halloween, the 31st, that will also be a lab. So your next test, and you'll know by that time, I mean, it'll be basically on chapter 14, and there'll be a little bit on 15 and a little bit on 16. All right, and then next week, after we take that test on Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll go over chapter 17. Thursday, we'll go over chapter 18. Friday, as always, will be a lab. And I'll give you some kind of work for 17 and 18, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. I want us to get into databases as soon as we possibly can. All right. I know you said you got to take off, so I'm going to give a 10-minute break right now. And at 9:05, I am going to come back and I'm going to write this letters thing that's right here. Okay, and I'm going to create that from scratch. So I'm going to go and refresh my water. I'll be back then in 9 minutes at 9:05. Grant, I hopefully will see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Thank you.
Actually, for the rest of you, I did have a drink here, so I might as well get going and start working on this right now. You'll notice I copied literally all of this right here, not this, but all of this stuff, and I put it into a prologue. So when we come in and we start to create stuff, it'll be there. It says create a GUI application for a letter delivery service. Every letter is a minimum of 50 cents to send. If the letter has been certified, it's 15 cents more, but it must include a tracking number. You can add up to 20 letters. Every time a letter is sent, it'll be added to the top of the transaction log, so the newest letters will show first. You store the list of sent letters in an array. If a letter does not include a tracking number, you'll make a letter object. If it does include a tracking number, you'll make a certified letter object. So all letters, whether they are certified or not certified, they will all have a recipient and a sent date. All right, and you can see there the constructor for a regular letter. It has just those two things in there. All right, and it also has get methods for the string. It has a get method for the sent date, and it has a get method for the price, which is always going to be 50 cents. You'll notice that it's a virtual so that we can change it in the child classes like certified letter. So certified letter looks just like a letter, except again, it has a tracking number in it. All right, and we're going to override the toString method. Okay, hopefully that makes at least a little bit of sense. So I'm going to build this interface that you see that literally is right here. We're going to build this interface and we will build it from scratch. And again, mine won't look exactly like the one in the book. I tend to put in a little bit more stuff than what they have in the book. So let's just get started here. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to create I'm just going to start up Visual Studio. All right, I've got a bunch of copies running already. Let's just close them all. Just so you see this, we're starting with a clean slate. So I'm going to start up Visual Studio. All right, and this is, what did we say? This is in the book here. This is 7. This is section 3, is it? Yep, section 3. All right. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a new folder on my system here, right under the desktop. And it's going to be called section 3, and that's where I'm going to put this code. Both of these programs, the one we write today and the one we write tomorrow. And of course, I misspelled section. There we go. So we now have a section 3 folder right there. Okay. So I'm starting up Visual Studio. I'm telling it to create a new project. It will be a Windows Forms app. I will call it, what was it? I think it was LB1 letters. something like that. And it'll be put into, again, this section 3 folder. All right, let's double check on that. So this was called LB1 underscore letters. Okay. Click create. There it is. I'm gonna make this a little bit wider than it is and a little bit bigger just to make sure I got enough room here. As soon as it comes up, there we go. That should be good. All right. I'll change the name of this right away to FRM letters. First, when it asks me, yes, I do want to change it. I will change my text up here to AWD 1100, chapters 14 through 16, letters, app, I don't know, doesn't really matter. Something like that. That looks okay. And I will change the color as I always do. Oh, I don't know what. Let's make it there. There we go. Now in here, I'm basically going to break my screen into two. And what I mean is, let me move this over. So let me view the toolbox. All right, that looks good. And I'm going to put in two group boxes that are going to take up the majority of the screen here. So that's kind of what it looked like to me, at least, that they did. So there's the first one. Whoops, come on. Here. All right, I'm going to make that, I guess it'll go about halfway and then down. Looks like pretty good. And this will be the other one. Looks like it made it a little bit too big. So let's stretch this out a little bit. Whoops, not that, not like that. There. All right, that looks pretty good to me. Okay, I'm going to make these darker just so that they stand out and you can see what I'm working with. So I'm going to make them a shade darker. There's one. And there's the other one. Okay. Now in this first, let's use the second one. This is going to be a text box. It's going to hold all the output. So let me just drag a text box into here. Right. It's going to be a multi-line text box because it has to be able to hold up to 20 of these things. I'm going to literally stretch it so it's almost all the way to the top and bottom. That looks pretty good. All right. And then on this one, we're going to have 3 buttons. And then we're going to have 4 labels. I'm going to make that label go back to the original color. Again, so it stands out. There's the first one. We will set the auto size property to false. Right? Okay. And we need 3 text boxes. All right. Pretty much our interface is built. Let's start changing names and sizes and whatever. So I'm going to come into here first. I'm going to do a Control A. I'll do it over here. I don't know if I want to change that or not. So let me do this again. Trying to unselect this. There we go. Let's just grab all of these. And as always, whoops, we will change the size. Seen me do this numerous times. All right. All right, so what else do I want to do here? Let's move this down just a little bit. Move this up a little bit. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to lock this part of my interface into place here. All right, and I might as well just lock this one into place right away too, because it's not, I don't want it to go anywhere. All right, so I've got 2 basic sections in my program. This is going to be my letter info. All right, so I'm going to call this group box here GB for group box, letter info. And I don't want there to be any text inside of it. So I'm going to get rid of the text. And now that's done. In this group box, I'm going to call letter history. So again, I don't want there to be any text in it. And this one will be called GB letter history. I spelled history wrong. There we go. The text box that goes in here, we're going to call it text box letter history. So TXT letter history. All right. So what else do we have? We got our buttons here. Well, this will be our send button. So BTN send, that's what they called it in the requirements. And this will say send. This one will be clear. And it'll be BTN clear. And this last one will be BTN exit. And it'll be for exit. Okay, we got those done. This label here is going to say on it additional fee for certified letter. So I'm going to call this LBL additional fee. And it says additional fee for certified letter. Probably going to, oh, it's not too big. Good deal. All right, now I'm going to center that. We go. This one is going to be for the recipient. So I'll call it LBL recipient. I don't know what that said to begin with, so we'll just set it back to there. That's okay. All right, so this again will be LBL recipient. And the text will be recipient. This will be TXT recipient. All right, this next one is sent date, so it'll be LBL sent date. And the text in it will be sent date. And this will be TXT sent date. And finally, this last one here will be LBL tracking number. And the text will be tracking number. And as you can see, it should have been a little wider. Fix that in a minute. And this last one here will be TXT tracking number. All right, let's grab these here. And I'm going to make them a little narrower. So I can make these a little wider. There we go. All right. And I'll lock that. All righty. Why it's doing that? It's not. There we go. All right. So I want these to be centered. And I want these to be centered. I'm going to leave this one right here as to be left justified. Okay, so let's see if I've got everything created for my interface and I've renamed everything. And looking at it there, it looks like I have. Okay, so let's move on here. This will be our BTN send. All right, and we'll write that momentarily. This will be our clear. We'll write that in a second, and that's our exit. We'll write that in a second. Let me go back as I always do. And I'm going to grab that exit button code. And as always, exit program or not. Paste that in, move this over. Okay, make this a little bigger so you can see it. All right. And for our clear button, we'll call this clear and set focus. And what do we want to do there? Well, we want to let's see, we want txt recipient dot text equals double quote txt sent date dot text equals double quote txt tracking number dot text equals double quote and txt recipient dot focus. Should be everything for that one, I believe. All right, let's see if we can check out all the stuff we've done so far to make sure it works. Before we do that, let's go back and do what we always do here, and that is I'm going to click over here. In fact, I'm going to click on the form. And I'm going to set my accept button to BTN send, my cancel button to BTN clear, my Windows start position or my start position to center screen. And let's also come in and in here, let's do a view tab order, and we'll set the tab order to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. All right, so view tab order. Let's save this. Let's run it and see what it looks like. All right, we can put stuff into each one of these. Clicking send, clicking clear. It cleared them all and it put the focus there. Clicking exit no and exit yes. So those all work. All right. I mean, that was the easy stuff. I think everybody'd agree with that. All right. So next, let's come in. We've created our interface. All right. And we've got 2 of our 3 buttons working. All right. So now I guess is the time that we can go out and we can start creating those classes. Remember, there's 2 classes that we're going to have here. There's going to be a letter class and there will be a certified letter class. So let's come in here and let's first take a look and see what's in these. So the letter class will have these 2 things in it. They'll have a recipient and it will have a sent date, and it'll also have a price in it. And technically that price can't change. It's 50 cents. So we're going to make that a read-only field. Then we'll write the constructor as shown. All right. We'll do our getter setters. Okay. And we'll write the toString method. Okay. So let's do that first. So I'm going to come into my program. Whoops, my program right here. I want to move that down. Right. Okay, so I want to move that back again. So tools, import and export settings, reset all settings. I don't want to save it. Next, finish. That should pop back into place now. Normally it doesn't take that long. I don't know why it's doing that, but it is. There, it says they were reset. And if I click close, that is now back into place. That's what I wanted. Okay, so going up to my letters program, the first thing I want to do is I want to go in and add a new class. So add, we'll go down to class here and we'll make it letter.cs. Okay, so here'll be our letter class, changing that from internal to public. Oops, trying at least. All right. And again, we will first put in our instance variables. We will have a string, which will represent the recipient. We will have a date time. All right, and that will be a sent date. In fact, let's make this underscore recipient, and this will be underscore sent date. And we will have our price, which is going to be read only. It'll be a decimal, and it'll be underscore price. So those are our instance variables. So these 3 lines of code went in and basically they've done this. Oops, that stuff in there. So now let's do the constructor. Okay. We will have 2 things passed in here. So again, always the name of the class. We will have a string passed in, which will be the recipient. We will have a date time passed in, which will be the sent date. All right, and we will say underscore recipient equal recipient and underscore sent date equals sent date, just accepting what's given to us from the help. Okay. All right, now we're going to write our getters and setters, and we only have getters. So we could sit there and write this in a bunch of different ways, but I'm going to show you a way that we really haven't used before. So these will be our getters. And this is in the book, but I just want to show it to you because I'm trying to be complete here. So I'm going to say public string recipient with a capital I, and then a fat arrow here, recipient. That's another way of writing a get routine. And we'll write another one for our sent date. Okay, and I don't want this one for the price. Okay. All right. The price can change. The price can change. If it is a non, right, if it is a non certified letter, it's 50 cents. We'll make it, I think it's the price today is like 55 or something like that. We'll just leave it at 50. It's fine. But I'm going to come in here and say public virtual decimal price, but I'm going to set that equal to 0.55 M. And all that means is right now I did not make that read only because it's going to change whether the letter is certified or non-certified. All right. So I didn't want it read only, and I didn't want that to be a constant for the same reason. Now we want to be able to override the toString method. Okay. I'm going to say that again. We want to be able to come in here and override the toString method. So I'm going to say public override, and you'll notice that as soon as I come in here and do that, one of the ones it shows is toString. All right, it gives you some garbage code that I really don't want. So it's got return, and I don't want any of this, so I'm just going to remove it. But I'm going to return sent date dot toString, and I want that to be in a month, day, year format. Okay. And after that, I'll want a blank space. And then after that, I'm putting it on multiple lines so you can read it. I will want the recipient's name. All right. And after that, again, a blank space. And then after that, a comma. Whoops. So after the recipient, we want a comma and then the price. We will do a toString on this and we will make it currency because it's the price. That's it. That is the entire, right there. That is the entire letters class. All right. So we don't need any of these. So let's get rid of those. Okay. So it's our letters, public class letter. We've got 3 instance variables, a recipient, a sent date, and a price, which is, it says read only. Now you don't have to worry about that being read only and then being able to use it down here. That's okay. All right. All this is saying is I'm not going to be able to change this in here when the program's running. Then I've got my constructor, which is going to accept my recipient and my sent date. Then I've got my getters, which I wrote in a quote, new way, unquote. Then our price, then our overridden toString method. That wasn't too bad. Let's do a file, save all. All right, and now let's come in and let's write the other class that we're going to have in here, which is our certified letter class. All right, now when we did the letter class, it just said public class letter, but you're going to notice when we do the certified letter, it'll be different. What do I mean? Let's do it. So I'm going to leave that open in case I need to go back to it. And let's come in here and add another class. And this is going to be certified letter. You have to spell right. C-E-R-T-I-F-I-E-D, letter. All right, so again, this will be public. But here we want to say that this inherits from the letter class. Why? Because a certified letter is a type of letter. Now it's giving me an error right here. It says there is no argument that corresponds to the required formal parameter recipient, because we haven't put that in yet. All right. What's going to be new here is we'll have one new instance variable, and that's that tracking number. So this will be our new instance variable. It'll be a string, and it'll be underscore tracking number. Then we'll have our constructor. Again, this will look a little different. It will have a string for the recipient. Move this up a little. In fact, I don't think we're going to need any of these again, so we'll see. A string for the recipient. We're going to have a date time for the sent date. We're going to have a string for the tracking number. All right, and again, now we want to come in and we want to put in the colon base, and we want to tell the system that the recipient and the sent date are both of those are going to be handled by the parent. Okay, and I think I need one more parenthesis at the end, one more right paren. No, maybe not. So let's see. All right, so I'm going to hit enter here. And I'll need my curly braces. Now that error went away. The only thing we want to put in here is what the IntelliSense has picked up. So again, when we come in here, if we create a new certified letter, we'll still have to pass it in a recipient, a sent date, and a tracking number. Those first two will be handled by the parent, by the letter class. The tracking number will be handled by this class. All right. So let's put in our getter. And let's put a comment in here. Getter. Public string tracking, tracking number. Tracking number. Bad arrow. Underscore tracking number. Okay, we've got that. And now we want to override the price. Okay. And again, there's different ways that we can do this. This is how I did it. Oops. Don't know why that went there, but it did. So I said public override double, not a double, decimal price. All right, so I'm overriding that right here. And I just used a simple get. And I said return 0.65 M, because remember that for a certified letter, it's 65 cents. All right. Now, I basically want to write the same thing that I wrote here for this overridden to string. So I'm going to go copy that. Come back into my certified letter. And I've got my public override to string. Now, this now becomes base.sent date. And this becomes base.recipient. Let's put this over another line here. and that'll still be price. Plus, I also want the tracking number. All right, again, I'm trying to be consistent here and put in everything that they asked for. Okay, and I believe at least that's everything for here. Okay, so if we take a look at this from the top, all right, the first key thing here is we said a certified letter inherits from letter. So a certified letter is a type of letter. Again, the base class or parent class there is letter, also known as the superclass. The derived class or subclass is certified letter. We still have a recipient, we still have a sent date, and we are adding a tracking number. We are telling it that we want the parent constructor, which is the constructor for letter. We want that to handle the recipient and the sent date, and we will handle the tracking number. There's our getter. We have overridden the price, and the reason that we're able to override that was in here, we use the word virtual. Notice if I remove the word virtual here and do a file, save all, and then we go back to here, we get an error. And it says, cannot override inherited member because it is not marked virtual, abstract, or override. So I'm just going to go back here and I'm going to add it back. All right. And now that error is gone. And then we print everything out. So those are our two classes. All right. So what's left to do? Well, basically what's left to do is to write what we want to have happen in our send method. Now, nothing should be broken yet. I should be able to come in and write this. Our send button still is not operational, but we can put stuff in here. And we can click clear. That works. We can click exit. And that works. All right. So again, what is left is to sit and write this code. It's not a lot of code, not a little bit of code, probably close to 100 lines with all the blank spaces and whatever. First thing I'm going to do, though, before we do anything there, is I'm going to come into here, and I cheated a little, and then I went out to the specs, and I grabbed from in here, there it is. I grabbed this. Okay, and I'm going to put it in there because that's the comments. Okay. All right, now I'm going to put in, I did have one global constant. Now, what they said was they wanted you to be able to hold 20 letters. I thought that was too many, so I just used 10 for my number, just so you know. Oh, I put this in the wrong place too. Isn't that nice? So let me cut this, save this. For now, at least, I'm going to close certified letter. I'm going to close letter, and I want to come back to here. All righty. And let me come in here. And there's where I want that comment to go. Okay. In my main part of my program. Looks like I won't need any of these. In fact, I will need the collections generic in a moment. Okay. Again, you were asked to have it hold up to 20 letters. I thought that was a little much, so I made it 10. So my global constant here, I set equal to 10. Okay. And that should say const. I don't know what I did there other than probably misspelling it. So that's the most letters that we can hold in there. Okay. All right. I had some global variables. Wanted a list of letters. I just wanted to call letters. There's a new list of letters. And I wanted to say that can hold no more than 10. Make another one of these, but these will be the certified letters. Right, so it's going to look the same, except the first one is a list of letters. The second one is a list of certified letters. And I could have 10 non-certified letters, 10 certified letters, or any combination of the two. All right. We were told to hold all of these ingredients inside of an array. So there's the array. And I want to know how many elements I have currently so I don't go over 10. All right. Pretty this up just a tad. There. All right. So now we're in our send routine. Again, there still shouldn't be anything that's broken. We haven't added any real code that could possibly break the system yet. So that's still running. All right, I am going to refresh my water. It is 9:36. I'm going to come back in 3 or 4 minutes and finish this up. All right, I'd like to finish this up right now. So this is the stuff for the send button. And as I oftentimes do, I use the keep going in here. So I've got a bool, keep going. I'm going to write the whole thing in here, okay? Even though it's going to give me a bunch of errors. So the first thing I want to say was I said validate. I think he wanted, we have a, let's see what we had in here. All right, we weren't told to do anything, so I want to validate the recipient. In other words, I want to make sure that the recipient isn't blank. All right. And I'm very quickly just going to write all these underneath just so these don't blow up. So I'll say here, private bool validate recipient. And I'm just going to return true for right now, just so that we get no errors in here. All right. So got that. If keep going. So in other words, if that returns true, then I want to say keep going equals validate sent date. All right. Again, that's going to be, for now at least, I'll write it just like this one. But this will be validate sent date. All right. So I'll put comments in here. Make sure recipient text box not empty. So here we'll put down recipient text box was not empty. All right, and here we'll put down an else, because there's no sense in going on. And we'll put a comment here that says that it was empty. Let's change this to was not empty. And here we'll say that it was empty. And if it was empty, we just want to return. There's nothing else to do. All right. So we've got all of that done. Now, when we get down to this point, all right, when we get down to this point, we want to see whether or not there was a tracking number. All right. So if I get down to here, I'll say sent date was not empty. And down here, we'll put down sent date was empty. So this will be an if. So if, keep going. All right, well, what do we want to do next? Well, we have to see whether or not there was a tracking number. So keep going equals, is there a tracking number? Remember, that's how we tell whether or not it is certified or not certified. So this will be my else here. And again, if it's else, I'm dead in the water. So I'm going to again return. All right. So let me write this routine quickly. Again, for now, we'll just return true. We're going to write all these in just a moment. All right. So nothing's broken. Now, if there was a tracking number, this returned true. So what do we know? We know that it has to be a certified letter. So if it gets down to this point, So if keep going, there's no Boolean keep going here because it's either, so I'll just instantiate a certified letter object. And again, I'll get an error because that hasn't been written. Otherwise, if keep going returned false, this is a, we'll just say a regular letter. All right, so else I want to instantiate a letter object. Hopefully that makes enough sense as you take a look at it. So let's just play computer here. All right. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that that text box for the recipient was not empty. That's what we're doing here. If it returned true, there is something in it. So now we want to make sure that there's nothing in there. All right. Or check for there being nothing in there. If there is nothing in there, all right, then I have to see whether or not there's a tracking number. So check to make sure that's not empty, check to make sure that's not empty, and check to make sure if there is something in there. If all three of these are filled in, it is a certified letter. So I want to write everything out and it's 65 cents. If there's something here and something here, but that is empty, and I click send, then it is a non-certified letter. So I'll write the recipient, I'll write the date, and I'll write 50 cents. Okay, hopefully that all made at least a little bit of sense. All right, I did write my own little show message down at the bottom, so I'm going to put it down here at the very bottom. So that'll be my private void show message. And it'll have a string for the message, and it'll have a string for the title. And there'll be a message box dot show with all that good stuff in there. And let's again put this out over multiple lines so you can read it. All right. And that's not going to be information. That's actually going to be an error if this gets called. All right. So let's write these routines. We're going to get errors here, but let's write these routines first. This one and this one, the validation ones, because they're not hard. So instead of true, we'll start out with bool retval equal true. All right. And I'm going to return retval here. And I'm going to do the same thing for the one down here. So let's put in our logic now. So if txt recipient dot text dot trim is equal to nothing, meaning that there was nothing in there, we'll call show message. We will pass in recipient name cannot be empty. Oops. And the title will be recipient name. How about just field empty. All right, if that's the case, well, there's nothing to remove, so there we don't have to, but we do have to set the focus. And we want to set retval equal to false. And that's going to be print. Okay, so that's validating. So if there was nothing in the recipient, we show a message that says recipient cannot be empty, and we set the focus. Now, for now, just so I can test that, let's comment these two lines out, and let's see if that works. So file, save all, run it. And with there nothing in here now, we should get an error message. Recipient field empty, recipient name cannot be empty. and there's our cursor. So if I do put that in right now, nothing happens because we haven't gotten that far yet. All right, so let me go and copy all of this because it's virtually the same routine. And I'm going to put it down here, but instead of this, instead of txt, whoops, I don't want to do that. It's easy. Oh, I put this into the sent date. Wasn't that lovely? So that one actually goes here. Okay, and this one will be sent date. And this will also say nice if I can spell, wouldn't it? All right, so I should be able to now check for both of those, and let's see. So if I put nothing in there, recipient field name empty, and it goes back. On this one, I think I said didn't set the focus to sent date, but that's okay. So if we put something here, sent date empty, cannot be empty, but that's, I gotta change that. So that has got to be to txt sent date dot focus. All right, let's double check one more time. Nothing in the recipient. Recipient field empty. Name cannot be empty. Sent date field empty. Sent date field cannot be empty. There we go. And again, if we put something in there, boom, nothing happens yet because we haven't told it to. All right. So we have now validated the recipient and we have now validated the sent date. Let's do the is there a tracking number, because again, it's pretty simple. If txt tracking number dot text dot trim dot toString, I guess you don't even need the toString, equal nothing. So if there's nothing in there, there's no error. We just want to return false, not return false. Retval equal false. Okay. So we have now gone in here and we have validated that there is something in the recipient, that there is something in the sent date, and if there is a tracking number, then we can call this now. Now we get an error when we bring that back because I haven't written that yet. So we will write that one right now. And that is to instantiate a certified letter object. Let's put that right below our last one that we have here, which is right here. So again, private void instantiate certified letter object. Okay. In fact, I'm going to quickly just grab this and I'm going to instantiate here a letter object. All right. And I should now be able to uncomment this one. And now there's no errors. Okay, so let's go in and instantiate first. So there was a, let's do it this way. We have validated the following. One, the recipient text box was not empty. The sent date text box was not empty. The tracking number text box also was not empty. This is a certified letter. So instantiate a certified letter object. Now I am going to grab all this here and I'm going to copy it down here, just make a couple minor modifications. This was not empty and this also was empty. This is a non-certified letter, so instantiate a letter object. Okay, so let's instantiate this. Well, one thing we have to do before we even instantiate is we have to make sure we haven't reached our limit. What's our limit? Remember, 10 is our limit. So if the number of elements, I must have spelled that wrong. If the number of elements that are right there if it is less than our total number of elements that we're allowing, which again, we changed to 10, then we can instantiate. I'll say, make sure there is room for a new certified letter object. All right. So we want to say certified letter equals, well, we got to give it a name. How about CL for certified letter equals new certified letter, and it's going to let us know what we need to put in there. It says we need a string for the recipient, a date time for the sent date, and a tracking number. All right. And those will be txt recipient.text. This will be a convert dot to date time, and I don't know if we've even done one of those before. Txt sent date dot text. And then finally, txt tracking number dot text. Now, before we do that, all right, before we do that, let's put in our argument 2 cannot convert from string txt tracking number dot text. Well, what did it say we needed here? Let's look. Because this is a new certified letter, so we've got to go back here and look. String, date time, string. Now, it doesn't like something. One thing I should have done here, didn't do, and let's go back and do this. All right, for the sent date right here, all we checked for was it empty? All right, but when we validated, if that's the case, okay, we do want to set red val equal to false. That's all correct. In fact, I'm going to, even though it's a little bad practice, I'm going to return false here. And I'm going to get rid of red val. All right, so if I get down to here, okay, so I'll put here check for empty sent date text box. Just like here, I could have put a check for empty recipient text box. All right. Now, if I get down to here, sent date text box was not empty. verify that it holds a date. All right, I didn't do that on my earlier copy, but that's bad practice. I should. So what do we have to do there? Well, we have to do a convert, which is going to mean we're going to need a Boolean here for result. All right, so I'm going to, and where do we want to put that? We have a variable for that. Let's make a variable too that we create. So date time, and we'll call it sent date. And I'm just going to set it. I'm not even going to I'm there. I'm going to do it like that. All right. So we want to put it into sent date. All right. So just say here true for now. All right. So result equals convert dot to date time. What do we want to convert? TXT sent date dot text. Where do we want to put it? Into sent date. That's either going to succeed or it's going to fail, right? What doesn't it like here? Okay. Usually it likes it with the operator. So what's the problem here? It's not convert from system.date.time to system.format provider. That's interesting. Okay, I think we're going to do it like this. Out and dot to string, and I want to format it like we did up above here. I don't remember where that was done, but it was up here someplace. It was down here. See, when you start putting extra validation in, you can see where, at least in a way, this starts to get a little bit more, not difficult, but it gets a little more verbose. It's a little more wordy, whatever you want to call it. All right, so let's see. I thought it would take that, but it doesn't like that either. Well, let's put this over 2 lines so we can at least see what we're working with. Don't think that has to even be global because I'm only doing it right here. So send date. I'm going to leave this as a string. Always had to do that before. How about that? Huh. Hmm? Must be an assignable variable. Wow, that's really interesting. I've never seen this error before. So like it is. Let's see. Does it give me a way to fix? Only a variable passed as a ref parameter. Yeah, I get that. Not changing it. Hmm. We're going to figure it out, but I just have to see how we figure it out. That's all. Cast is redundant. Show potential fixes. Remove unnecessary cast. Well, that gives me a different error. Because right now, it is checking it for being empty, but it is not checking it to make sure that it is a valid date value. Try this. I'm going to convert. That should be a try parse. That should be a date time dot try parse. That was my error. Now I do need the word out in here. There we go. And I don't need two parens. Oops. There. All right, so sorry about that. If this returns false, it wasn't a valid date. So I'm going to put another if in here. All right, so if not result, okay. Now let's clean this up a little bit here. Okay, well, one thing we want to do is now we do want to clear it. So txt sent date dot text equals double quote, and then we'll set the focus. Now, I'm going to take what I had here and I'm going to try to fix it a little. There's my if. I want to bring my ret val back. Set it equal to true. All right, so if this is the case, I'm going to set ret val equal to false. All right, this will now become an else. I'm going to throw everything that's in there in here. And this will be ret val equal false. And this will be return red val. That's cleaner, in my humble opinion. All right, now let me do a file save all. We'll go back over everything in just a moment. So if there's, oh, I'm still, because I haven't finished everything yet in here, so. Yeah, let me just comment this line out for right now. All right, but we can now check all three of our, or four of our error. There's nothing in here. All right, recipient field empty, cannot be empty. Now this is date. Let's put in something invalid. Now it's invalid. All right, and it says invalid sent date entry. Okay, and it cleared. How about in like today's date, which is 10/24/2022? Will it accept that? Yes. All right. So all of that is now working. So let's uncomment this and get this back in here. All right. I'm going to move this over quite a bit. Like that. All right. All right, it's telling me it does not like the way that this is set up. So let's go back and look at our certified letter. According to this, a certified letter should have a string for the recipient, a date time for the sent date, and a string for the tracking number, which I thought it was what it was being given. So it does not like this line or this line, so it's all in here. Probably because I don't have a paren there. There we go. There. Okay. So in other words, if I get down to here and there's room, create a new certified letter object. You will add to that what's in the first text box, what's in the second text box, and what's in the third text box. Now, one thing I can do to clean this up just a little bit is where I was coming in here and I've got this date time sent date. I'm going to get rid of it and I'm going to make it global. I should not have any error there, but what I can now do is in here, I can just change this to that way the hay over to sent date. That's a little cleaner to look at. There we go. All right, so I now have that done. Okay. All right. What's left? We've done that. So we created or instantiate. So instantiate new certified letter object right there. Okay. And after we do that, add new object to certified letter list. So certified, we call that. We called our lists certified and letters. Okay, maybe not the best names, but that's what we used. So certified dot add, and we want to add that certified letter. All right. And now we have to also add the info to the what? I mean, it's the what do we call that? Is that the history? TXT letter history text box. All right, so let's do that. So the rich TXT letter history dot text, and we want to add that to it. So plus equals our certified letter dot toString plus \n. Okay. What else do we have to do? Well, we just added that. We also have to add it to that string array. Add the info to the string array. Okay. Which I think, what did we call that array up here? It was way up on the top. Sent letters. So sent letters equals, oh, hello. Sent letters, it's equal to txt letter history dot text dot split, and we got to split it based on that \n. So in other words, what that's going to do is it's going to take each thing that we put in there. I don't want to do. There we go. I want to take each thing that I put in there, and I want to add it to that array. That is a single quote. That's right, because that's the split. So let's see. There we go. Let's see. We want to make sure that the LBL additional fee is visible. Also, add 1 to total number of elements. So plus num elements. Okay. If this wasn't true, there wasn't room. No room for this certified letter. So else we'll do our show message, and we'll say no more room for certified letter in list. And we'll even be a little bit more specific here and say list is already filled. All right. And let's make sure that that label isn't visible. So LBL additional fee dot visible equal false. Taking this from the top then. All right. We now want to instantiate a certified letter object. This is what's in the first text box. This is what's been validated from the second text box. That's what's in the third text box. We want to then add it to our list and add the information to the particular text box. And we want to add that to our string array. And as it says, make label visible and add 1 to our total number of elements. If we hit the else, there was no room for it. We've already got 10 letters in there. So we just give an error message. All right. Now, the good news is the other one is very similar to this. So I'm going to copy everything. In fact, I've already got a comment there, so start down here, and we're just going to copy every bit of it in here. So the text box is not empty. That was not empty. This was empty. All right, so we're going to put this in. So now we want to make some changes. If there's still room, now we want to say letter, not leader, letter L equals new letter. All right. And that does not have a tracking number. So we only want to put in these two things. Then we can add the object to our letter list. And this is letters.add. And this will be an L as well. And this we don't want to make visible. And that should be false. Now I'm hoping at least we're done, but we'll give it a quick look. I'm going to give it a run. Okay. Let's run it. We'll add a few of them here. So I wrote mom a letter. It was today. There is no tracking number. Send. There it is. Should make that a lot bigger, but that's okay. Let's do it right now. So forget. As always, maybe 20 will be too big now. I don't know, but that's okay. There we go. All right, so let's run it again. Again, mom, 10/24/2022, send, there it is. All right, let's clear. And let's say cable bill. Let's say we're going to send that out tomorrow. And that will have a tracking number of 1. All right, so that is 50 cents, that or 50, I made it 55, and that is 65. All right, let's go back and make that 50 cents again. That was what we were told, that it was 50. All right, now it did not take that that \n. So let's look at that. And let's see, I could be wrong here. What? Let's see. I think when I add that text box, I need a \r\n for that. Maybe I'm wrong, but we'll see. I don't know if this is going to work, but we're going to see. It could be just a single quote there. I don't know if this is going to fix it or not, so we'll see. All right. Electric bill. All right, it was 65 cents. I need a space there, but it's no biggie. Let's clear it. And let's again put in mom. All right, that is in another line. Good. All right, so the only thing I want to do is I want a space before that tracking number, and then I think I'm finished. We can go back over it then. Oh, that'll be back into here, I think. It'll be in my certified letter where I'm printing this out. There we go. It says there we do have a space after the recipient. Oh, we need one after the price. There we go. Good, fix everything. We'll see. It says here the field letter price was never used. Maybe I don't need that. Let's comment that out and see if we get any errors. All right, mom. Okay, there's that. Water bill. All right, looks good to me. We can go and check and see. Let's see if we put in. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we get our message. There's no more room, and it doesn't work. Everything appears, at least, appears to be working right now. Okay, so let's just take 5 minutes and go over the entire thing, and we'll call it a period. So we started with our letter class, which had in it a recipient and a sent date. The recipient was a string, the sent date was a date time. We had our constructor, which read the two of them in. We had our getters, where this is our get for our recipient and our get for our sent date. We did set price to 50 cents in accordance with the requirements, but we made it virtual, so we'll be able to change it later. All right. We also overrode our two-string method, so it would print the sent date in that format, followed by a space, followed by the recipient and a space and a comma, and then the price, which should always be 50 cents in this case. So file, save all. Then we had our certified letter. Looked very similar. All right. Except we added in here the tracking number. We also told it we needed all three fields in our constructor, but the first two would be handled by the letter class. The last one would be handled here. We added a new getter right there. We set our price here now to 65 cents as opposed to 50 as it was. And we could do that because that was set up as virtual, and we again overrode the two-string method. All right, so file, save all. So that one is done as well. Then in our letter class itself, the first thing we wanted to do is we want to make sure this is not empty. Then we want to make sure that both A, this is not empty, and B, that what's in there is a valid date. And then in here, if it is empty, that's not an error. That just means it's a quote regular letter, unquote, cost of 50 cents. If there is something in there, then it is a quote certified letter, unquote, cost. So 50 cents if there's nothing in there, 65 cents if there's something in there. All right. We already did our exit button. That's tried and true. We've been doing that forever. This was our clear and set the focus. Clear out the 3 text boxes and set the focus to the first text box. So the only one that's left in here was our send button. All right. So where I have here, make sure recipient text box not empty. I want to make it validate recipient text box not empty. So here we're going to put another message that will say validate sent date text box not empty, and if not empty, holds valid date. All right. So we've got our old buddy keep going. We set it equal, it's good. So validate recipient will return true if there was something in there and false if there was not. If there was something in there, then we're going to validate that the sent date was valid. Otherwise, we're returning. Okay. If the recipient was valid, meaning it wasn't empty, and the sent date was valid, meaning it was a valid date, and of course not empty. All right. Then we want to say, is there a tracking number? If there is a tracking number, we want to instantiate a certified letter object. If there's not a tracking number, we don't. Now, I was just thinking about this. We probably, this should make sense, this validate recipient. There's nothing new in here. All right. There's also nothing new in here. Not there, I'm sorry. So the recipient one is right there. Nothing new there. Now for the sent date, we are checking for it being empty, which is fine, but we probably could just do this. Because if it's empty, it's going to fail that anyway. I'll leave it the way it is. It's okay. All right. So for the sent date, again, we are first coming in validating. If it is empty, we're just giving a message that it is empty. Returning false, setting the focus. If we get down to here, there was something in there, but we don't know if it's a valid date or not. So we did a try parse after I realized, after a while, after checking Google, that it wasn't a convert. All right, sorry about that. That if the try parse failed, we again printed an error message that said invalid date, sent date entry. And we return false. Otherwise, we return true. So if this check passed, meaning there was something in the recipient text box, if this text check passed, meaning there was something in the sent date text box, if if those two passed, then we know that it's valid. In other words, we either have to create, we should either create a certified letter object or a regular letter object. All right. So we check to see if there was a tracking number. If there was a tracking number, if this returns true, then we want to instantiate a certified letter object. If this returned false, then we want to certify a quote regular unquote letter object. All right. So not really humongous program, but big enough, I guess. If we instantiated a letter object, that's a certified letter object, we'll do that one first because we should. So as it says in the comment, we have validated that the recipient text box was not empty, the sent date text box was not empty. And it also held a valid date. Grab that copy in just a second. All right, and that the tracking number text box was not empty. So this is a certified letter. So we instantiate a certified letter object. How do we get that? We grab those three things. First text box, second text box after it's been validated, third text box. If that's hard to read, let's just hit enter. Move them down over here someplace so you can see it. Okay. Once we've done that, we want to add that to our list of certified letters. Okay. And we want to add that that info to our big box that's on the right. Okay, we'll just leave it there. All right. And then we add the info to the string array, but we have to split it because we don't want that \n. We want to make that additional fee thing visible. And I don't even know, do we have a thing in there that says additional fee? This. Oh, okay, that's what it is. All right. So let's double check and make sure that that worked. This should actually be turned off when we start. So let's do that first. So I'm going to go into the load here and say LBL additional fee dot visible equal false. All righty. So let's check and see. It's not showing good. But if we do put in something, so again, electricity bill, and we put in, now as soon as I put in something here, okay, and I hit send, it shows this. But if I come back and clear this, now when I clear it, I got to clear that out too. But let's put in mom. Now this should disappear. And it does. All right, so everything there is working. Let's again make sure that we can only put in 10 letters. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now we get our error message. Good. Everything appears to be working. Let's go back into, where this visible here. Let's put that into our clear routine as well. All right. So if we run this and again put in, I don't know, Bill. That shows, but if I click clear, these should clear and this should become invisible. Good deal. All right, everything is done. So one last time then, tomorrow, what I am going to do is I am going to go over another one of these. It's much more intricate. We are going to go over the one for photos. As you can see, there's a lot more to this. So I'm going to see if I have time. I'm going to try to build that interface before class tomorrow, and we'll go over it at that time. But first, I will go over chapters 15, just the first part on interfaces, and all of chapter 16. Okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow.